It's Monday, February 18th, Tuesday, February 19th, if you're on the East Coast, across the pond, or down under. And this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. Hope you had a great day and night. I am your host, Dave Scott, broadcasting to you live from the Great White North, on top of the snowy mountains of central British Columbia, right here at SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show, including Deep Talk Radio and Revolution Radio. If you want to take a listen to our archives, they are free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. You can rock out to Bumblefoot, go shopping right now at our Spaced Out Radio store, read up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire, and so much more. Tonight's show is brought to you by the YouTube channel Ensuho. Sebastian Martin brings high-quality messages to the masses. Head to our website, click on the Ensuho banner, and subscribe to the channel today. We start off the final full week of February with a topic that's a little controversial. John Potash is here to discuss his book and research into secret CIA programs that has left a trail of blood and death. As scary as that sounds, like right out of a Hollywood movie script, John believes this to be true and has written about it in his book, Drugs as Weapons Against Us, the CIA's murderous targeting of SDS, Panthers, Hendrix, Lennon, Cobain, Tupac, and other leftists. So why use drugs to kill? Is it the access to them? Is it a clean way to commit a crime right in front of the public's eyes? We'll find out. Then at the bottom of Hour 3, we've given Olaf Phillips a night off tonight. I will be reading the SOR Newswire, but we're going to get into something a little bit different. And we're going to talk about my blog that I wrote yesterday that can be found at spacedoutradio.com and in the news section. Mr. John Potash, it's been a couple of years since we had you on Spaced Out Radio, but we're glad to have you back here, my friend. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Dave. Dave, I'm sorry that my assistant, basically who set up this interview, may not have sent you the screener for the film, but the book is now a film, Drugs as Weapons Against Us.
Perfect.
The CIA War on Musicians and Activists. So it's like a 2-hour synopsis of the book, basically, but it's showing all the sources saying what they said in the book, and a lot of the sources talking about what was happening, including the musicians. I have Cobain on there, John Lennon talking in there, Tupac Shakur talking in there, etc.
Wow. What made you make it into a film?
Well, I just wanted to reach more people, and I wanted people to understand that here's the CIA whistleblowers, the FBI whistleblowers, the DEA whistleblowers, and the musicians talking about all these things that happened, in their lives, and to want people to, get the full reality of it all.
Now, when you started this program, and you've now written a couple of books on this subject, what intrigued you about going down this path? Because the one thing that we have learned through the conspiratorial world is the CIA doesn't like people talking about them.
Well, that's true for sure. But I've been doing counseling for 3 decades for my day job, and started as an addictions counselor, and that remained an expertise of mine. But then I took on trauma and mood disorders also. But just finding out so much of what's really behind, I heard stories from my clients about, the government's really trafficking these drugs. But then getting into the nitty-gritty details of how the CIA's Project MKUltra really tested 36 different drugs to use for what they called unconventional warfare, and that warfare was really on its own citizens, and who dissented from their incredibly pro-war, racist policies, and so that's. Just finding that stuff out was scary, intriguing, but very scary, of course, and very sad when I, just loved some of these musicians who they targeted, and saw their careers, ended shortly, and would have loved to have heard more music from Kurt Cobain, for example, more music from John Lennon and Tupac Shakur and Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin and all, and it's just so sad that we didn't get more great music from these artists, and it's sad we didn't get to see, of course, the Kennedys fulfill what they wanted to fulfill, in as presidents of the United States. Of course, Robert F. Kennedy was about to be president before he was assassinated by what I show was a CIA operation, and on behalf of the oligarchs.
Well, Sirhan really didn't even recall doing that, did he?
Yeah, the best evidence was that he was. They used drugs and hypnosis to get him to do what he did, but I just show, a lot of that evidence of how he was more of a distraction from the real murderer. And I have the coroner in my film saying that the fatal shots came from within an inch of Robert F. Kennedy's right ear, and I have the witness, as a journalist who was at the incident, at the event, in the kitchen pantry, seeing it happen, and said that Sirhan got no closer than 2 feet from Robert F. Kennedy in front of him, and he saw the security guard take out his gun and start shooting right behind Kennedy, and in the position to shoot him right in the back of the head, where the fatal shots came from.
Right. So when we look at this and you look at your situation, I mean, you must have had numerous clients as a counselor come to you and say, look, this is what I think is going on, because, there is that client and counselor privacy privilege there. Yeah. What made you all of a sudden feel that you needed to start looking into this a little bit more? Was it the multitude of stories, or was it something more than just that?
Well, I was already into political activism and social activism, anti-war activism, and kind of some anti-racism activism. I was already into that when I was around 1990. I started doing this work in 1989, and I was getting into a lot of that activism. And when I was sitting on the street blocking the streets in the anti-war protest for the first Gulf War in 91, I was sitting next to a woman who was part of the Christic Institute, which was investigating the CIA trafficking cocaine, and just sent me a copy of the Kerry report right after it came out, or like within a few years of it coming out, about that most people never got a chance to read. And so I was lucky, just had some good fortune that way. But I'd also attended a talk by CIA whistleblower John Stockwell, who personally told me after his talk about the CIA trafficking heroin from the Vietnam area and into the United States. And so I just slowly but surely, with my different activist behaviors, working in different activist ways and going to lectures and all that, just started accumulating more and more of this kind of information. As I say, partly from the people I was counseling, partly from events I was attending and getting involved in, and then through my own research, and then through hundreds of personal interviews and loads of research in the New York Public Library, being able to look at all the newspapers around the country and reading loads of books and looking at CIA documents on MKUltra. There was about 30,000 documents they found, even though the CIA director had shredded about 90% of the documents. So that's the way I found out a lot of my information.
So when you started going through all of this information, were you blown away by what you were finding? And could you give us a few examples of things that just kind of shocked you that you didn't know were really going on?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I just didn't know that Project MKUltra was so vast. It had 199 different sub-projects, and to just see the overwhelming evidence of that, John Lennon, to find the book by a attorney, he's a British attorney who was a longtime crime reporter named Fenton Bressler, and to see his 7-year investigation where he lays out the fact how the CIA was behind Chapman's shooting John Lennon, but also another book, the research on the fact that the Dakota doorman that night was a guy named Jose Sanjanis Perdomo, and he was actually working for the CIA for a number of years. And so he was actually another shooter in that situation. But that situation was incredible to find out. Interviewing all the people involved in Tupac Shakur's life and death, I ended up finding out things that I never, the media in our country covers Tupac Shakur an incredible amount. They have so many articles, so many films on him. And, I interviewed his business manager and his national lawyer, and they say that no one's talking about the fact that he was head of the New African Panthers for at least a year when he was 17, 18 years old. And so, finding out about his activist leadership before he became a rapper was fascinating for me, with all the coverage, but all the censorship too. And it was the same thing with Cobain's activism that few people know about. But then, the fact that he, the top forensic expert in the country, really, he was the former president of the American Academy of Forensic Science, Cyril Wecht, says that all of his best evidence shows that Cobain was murdered and was made to look like a suicide. So that a lot of that information really blew me away when I uncovered that.
So when you go through this, how do you believe a whistleblower or these people who are telling you this information? Because let's face it, there are a lot of people who hold a lot of information in, and whether or not they're allowed to speak on it, especially if they're a government employee or a contractor, is very, very difficult for them to do. So why believe them? Were there multiple stories that were adding up together, or were you just that confident? Explain that.
Yeah, it was multiple sources. I left out, when I first put my film together, for example, I had, it was over 3 hours, and of course I had to cut it down to a watchable length, 2 hours. But I had, someone working for the State Department who was over in Vietnam, seeing the heroin loaded up onto the military planes headed back for the U.S. I had someone who was flying the heroin from Vietnam to the U.S., one film talking about it all. In my film, I put a second source besides John Stockwell lecturing about this. I put in Judy Woodruff of Frontline, who people can still hear today on PBS. But she says in a Frontline special report about how the CIA was trafficking the heroin from Vietnam into the U.S. and showed the CIA memorandum that revealed that. So I'm going to show that in my film. So there was multiple sources, and so I tried to put more than one in each section, but of course, time didn't allow too many. They allowed maybe one or two for each part of the information. Nonetheless, in my book, I cite the multiple sources for much of this information.
Mm-hmm. Why would the CIA get involved in the drug trade?
Well, the CIA, I show the history of the CIA and the fact that they were founded by the oligarchs, the wealthiest families in this country, who, according to people like Francis Stoner Saunders, who was a magazine editor in England and did a great work called the Cultural Cold War, the CIA in Arts and Letters, along with the top CIA whistleblower, Victor Marchetti, one of the highest level whistleblowers. In his book, CIA and the Cult of Intelligence, they both said that, these families put their own, family members in the top positions of the CIA. And these families that show their history, they go back, they were opium trading, way back from the 1700s onwards with the British East India Company. And these families were the Russells, the Pierponts, the J.P. Morgan family was John Pierpont Morgan, the Cabots, the Lowes, the Greens, the Delanos, and they founded founded most of the Ivy League colleges and started secret societies or these clubs in the colleges like Skull and Bones and the Porcelain Club at Harvard, or and each of these Ivy League colleges had these kinds of clubs, and their vast opium money. Not only did they start these colleges, but they had these clubs in there that when the kids graduated from the colleges, they got about, for example, at Skull and Bones, they got about $220,000 from the Russell Trust. And so people that graduated from Skull and Bones included, members of the Rockefeller family, of course, J.P. Morgan, Vanderbilt's, Carnegie's, all graduated from these different Ivy League colleges and were in these exclusive clubs and got this head start, and then had huge positions of power now. So the opium continued, the opium trading continued, that even when it was made illegal, they all the best evidence has these families still involved in the trade, but they were making more money off it. When they started the CIA with the National Security Act of 1947, they actually made the CIA above the law. And all the best evidence shows that the CIA just continued what the oligarchs were doing and kept trafficking. They coveted the Vietnam area because that's where the poppy fields were for the Golden Triangle, they call it, because it's the best place to grow poppies in the world, except for the second best place is the Golden Crescent around Afghanistan. And these two areas best places to grow poppies, which produce opium and heroin, are at the opposite ends of the same mountain range. And so I showed how it's no coincidence why the two longest wars in U.S. history are in those two areas. And so that's what they coveted, the oligarchs. They coveted the best fields for poppies to make the most money off heroin, and that's what they're getting today in Afghanistan after losing it in Vietnam, having the war over it.
Now, looking at it, I always thought that the CIA was started as a government agency by Harry S. Truman, who, when I believe he was still vice president at that time to Roosevelt.
Well, it was 1947, and so Truman was actually already in the president's office. Roosevelt died by that time, and Truman was surrounded by these oligarchical families. Henry Stimson had a high position in the government. Dulles had been head of OSS. The Dulles brothers were the lawyers for the Rockefellers and J.P. Morgan interests. They just had many people in the government surrounding Truman that really had the ultimate power. And they heavily influenced Truman to, allow this legislation. And so that's basically what got them the CIA the CIA started. And, they immediately Dulles became the longest CIA director. John Foster Dulles became Secretary of State. So, they just had heavily influence over all this.
John Potash is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. You can head over to Amazon to get his great book that we highly suggest you do. It is called Drugs as Weapons Against Us, the CIA's Murderous Targeting of SDS, Panthers, Hendrix, Lennon, Cobain, Tupac, and Other Leftists. And, of course, there's been a movie made about this as well. Where can people see this movie, John?
Yeah, we can go to drugsasweaponsmovie.com to see all the outlets, but it's sold on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Best Buy, Target, Walmart, etc. And then you can rent it on Vimeo, Vudu, iTunes, Google Play, Microsoft Xbox, YouTube Rent, places like that.
Excellent. Now, we're going to get into the music side of things here, but we got a couple minutes before we got to go to break here at the bottom of the hour. In regards to this topic, when you or anybody who has been on this show has talked about the CIA, there's always one way or another been a run-in with them. Have you had that run-in about what you were trying to expose?
Well, I've had strange things happen here and there, and I've been heavily censored. And I think the heavy censorship is keeping me quiet enough. Not as many people are finding out about this, but I don't know in which all the ways I've had run-ins, but I've had mail opened, I've had calls cut off on radio programs before, I've had emails not work with people, I've had a number of things like that happen. Yeah.
Does it bother you? Does it bother you that
Sure.
you are putting your life and potentially your family's life in jeopardy because of this?
Yeah, sure. It scares me a bit, but I'm just, I just want things to change, and I'm just, too willing to keep going no matter what. Look, I was communicating with Dave McGowan before he passed, and he was warned that people like him just might find themselves with stage 4 cancer for talking about the stuff he talks about. And a few months later, he found himself with stage 4 cancer and died within 6 months. And that was very sad for me, because I was just starting to, compare notes back and forth with him before he had to go into the hospital. And but seeing people like him pass, and seeing people like Gary Webb, of course, die with 2 bullets to the head, and they call it a suicide, and so many others. I just want to keep getting these ideas out there and try to change things.
Why do you feel it's your duty? Was it because of these clients that you had, and you had a little bit of an emotional attachment to their stories? Because after all, even though you're a professional, you are human too.
Yeah, partly that, partly wanting my nephews to have a better future, and just wanting to change things.
I don't blame you. I think we all want to have that type of change. But in regards to everything that you have found out, how, as we go into the final minute here, how have you been able to confirm a lot of this evidence?
Well, I just keep finding more and more of this evidence. I've found really about 2 or 3 times as many sources as I have in the film, for example, and just so much evidence around the control of the media, which makes radio programs like yours so important, Dave, to get this kind of information out there, because our mainstream media won't put this kind of information out there. And just found so many sources, so many different independent sources for a lot of this information.
Wonderful. John, I'm going to get you to sit tight here as we're going to step out at the bottom of the hour here. Our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio is author John Potash. He's also created a movie called Drugs as Weapons Against Us, the CIA's War on Musicians and Activists. You can go on Amazon to purchase that, or you could go on Amazon, purchase the book, Drugs as Weapons Against Us, the CIA's murderous targeting of SDS, Panthers, Hendrix, Lennon, Cobain, Tupac, and Other Leftists. We're going to get more into this incredible story and findings right after this.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio Live with Dave Scott on the Deep Talk Radio Network.
Hi there, this is Geraldine Orozco from San Francisco's Bay Area Meditation. I invite you to join me the first Tuesday of every month with Dave Scott for Spaced Out Radio's The Spiritual You. In this fast-paced world we live in, it's time for you to take some time for you. We'll cover every possible subject, from powerful meditation to healing techniques to your own intuition and spirituality. So come join us for The Spiritual You.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Coming soon to our website, spacedoutradio.com, is the SOR Space Travelers Club. For just $5 a month, you can get into a private area on our site where you can hang with other listeners in our chat room, post in our forum, and check out a bunch of exclusive content and store that won't be found anywhere else, including a nightly after-show party with Dave. It's going to be the best $5 a month you're going to spend. The SOR Space Travelers, only at spacedoutradio.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want, when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch? Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized Escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
We're bringing scientific thought to the paranormal. Hi there, this is Spaced Out Radio scientist Chris Cogswell. Join me, Chris Zuger, and Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month, where we break down the who from the woo when it comes to everything paranormal. We'll investigate and try to bring sensible answers to those straight and sometimes outlandish questions people have. Hey, not everything has an answer, but we'll do our best. Listen in to Reality Paranormal only on Spaced Out Radio.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
Did you know Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi there, this is Tessa Nicole Thomas, and I'm here to take you on a paranormal journey each Saturday and Sunday night. Why change the station when you have it all right here? Together, we'll hang out and share some strange and scary stories. And don't forget, we have Psychic Sundays as well, so come tune in Spaced Out Weekend. We get going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, only at spacedoutradio.com, where we own the night.
Hi, George Norrie here. Are you ready for UFO MegaCon, the immersion event? 7 days, 8 nights, 50 new speakers, UFO military witnesses, experiencer groups, skywatches, and so much more. Join me at UFO MegaCon, March 24th through the 30th in Laughlin, Nevada. Truly the one and only new information conference of the year. Now check it out at UFOMegaCon.com. That's UFOMegaCon.com.
Hello, this is your guitar man, Ron Bumblefoot Thal, and I have to tell you, I love the response I get for Little Brother is Watching from Spaced Out Radio fans. It's amazing how music can inspire and make people think deeper about what's going on in the supernatural world. You can head over to my website, bumblefoot.com, to check out my music, my guitar workshops, my touring, even check out some of the hot sauces that I'm working on. And make sure you keep on listening, because with Spaced Out Radio, you know Little Brother is watching.
Heading to Vancouver and looking for a night on the town? The Moose Vancouver is the bar that never stops rocking until 2 a.m. every night. The Moose has great food with everything on the menu from $6.95 to $8.95. Fantastic, vibrant staff and rock and roll that will bring you back to when the music was real, the hair was long, and the guitars were rocking. Get your party on at the Moose Vancouver, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Welcome back to the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Pleasure to have you with us as we broadcast from the frozen Canadian tundra of SOR headquarters. And tonight we are talking about the CIA. Are they killers, or is it something else? John Potash is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. You can check out his movie. It is called Drugs as Weapons Against Us, the CIA's war, or the CIA war on musicians and activists. It can be found at johnpotash.com as well if you want to check that out, or get his book on Amazon, Drugs as Weapons Against Us as well. John Potash, welcome back to Spaced Out Radio. Great to have you with us.
Thanks for having me on again, Dave.
Now, there's a lot of musicians out there that you claim in your book and in your movie were actually taken out by the CIA. And I got a question in regards to this. How do you think the CIA decides to target a particular musician?
Well, I think there's a number of reasons they might target certain musicians, but one of the reasons is if they have ideas or activist notions that are anti-war and pro civil rights, for example, in the 60s, but also against what is the right-wing agenda of the CIA and the oligarchs. So they target musicians for that reason. But starting in the 60s, they appeared to try to manipulate as many musicians as possible to promote drugs. And I showed the evidence that they did that, such as, for example, the Ernest Hemingway's longtime editor, A.E. Hotchner, had written a book called Blown Away about the Rolling Stones. And in that book, he says that that Robert Lashbrook, the deputy director of the CIA's Project MKUltra, brought to London in 1965 loads of LSD and loads of money and agents, and instructed the agents to get the LSD in as many musicians' hands as possible. And to show how that was to get these musicians to promote LSD to the masses, and the masses were, about them really targeting idealistic youth, and the idealistic youth that were involved in the freedom rides down to help Martin Luther King out in the South, as well as the budding youth that were opposing the Vietnam War that was going much stronger in 1965. And so by spreading acid like crazy that way, by having the musicians promote acid, they were, getting this to hurt the minds of the anti-war activists, but also to divert them from their best activism and get them their own studies that showed that it would get people to become less activists, actually, in the long run. And so LSD was actually their top weapon under Project MKUltra. But they also had, of course, the other weapons of heroin and cocaine and ecstasy and speed and super psychedelics like DMT, STP, and BZ. And they had a number of different operations and projects to spread and promote the use of them.
So when you look at it, there's a lot of musicians out there that promote, peace, love, war, and are politically active as well on both sides of the left and right. What would make something so dangerous in regards to what, say, people like Kurt Cobain or Tupac or John Lennon were saying? I mean, I think of the Dixie Chicks. I think of, Axl Rose has made comments. Many people have made comments. Eminem has a large following. We don't see anything happening to him.
Well, I do have Eminem in my book, and he was visited by the Secret Service, and he was warned, and his closest, his right-hand man, DJ Proof, was murdered, and another member of his group was shot. So I do show how he was likely targeted. He was targeted. There's no doubt about it when the Secret Service visits you and warn you, But I can only cover so many people. I can only find the evidence of so many people,
right.
And so I put them in my book. But it's basically it's partly the amount of influence. Now I argue that Lennon and Cobain, they've both been called the voices of their generation. So they threatened to influence the hearts and minds of the masses. And that's what the CIA wanted to do. They wanted to influence the hearts and minds of the masses because they knew they couldn't control everybody physically because they're too outnumbered. I mean, the 1% is really the 0.1% is extremely outnumbered by 99%. So in their own documents, they talk about, in U.S. intelligence documents, they talk about using propaganda to make people feel like they're acting in their own interest when really they're acting in the interests of the oligarchs. And then they were using, LSD, and U.S. Senate Church Committee, analyzed Project MKUltra in the mid-1970s and said that LSD was used on, Americans at all social levels. Many people were dosed involuntarily, and it was used because they felt like they could manipulate people easier once they were using LSD and other drugs. And so, with these musicians, I just show how people like Tupac Shakur, being really the most influential musician in the black community, he was, a radical leftist from birth, and was actually getting the Bloods and Crips gangs to call peace truces and turn on to activism, and getting many of them to stop dealing drugs. This was part of his Black Panther extended family's plan, and it was working. They were getting peace truces to spread across California, and then spread across the country. And they were getting thousands and thousands of people in each, people in each state to turn on to activism, thousands of gang members. For example, the Latin Kings, the largest gang in New York, was 3,000 strong, and they were found to have given up drug dealing, according to a Columbia University Press book on them and their gang conversion to activism. And they had completely given up drug dealing, and that would have taken billions of dollars of profits away from the CIA, drug traffickers, but even more money from the bankers that laundered that money. And so that was a huge blow to the huge amount of money laundered. And that, United Nations estimates of how much is laundered in the U.S. alone of banks, it's between $500 billion and $1 trillion a year is laundered through U.S. banks, and most of that's drug money.
Well, let's stick with Tupac Shakur for a minute, because in that death, he was killed, I believe, in 1996, driving with Suge Knight down Las Vegas Boulevard, or just turning onto Las Vegas Boulevard after a Mike Tyson fight. Now, this was a gentleman who, it was very well known that he and Suge Knight were, near the end of their contractual obligations, and right. Tupac had wanted to move on because he felt he was getting ripped off financially by Suge Knight and Death Row Records. So there was a lot of ways that caused a lot of tension too in regards to it. So how do you go from the tensions with Suge Knight, who is known as one of the baddest people in the world, who I believe is serving 30 years to life right now in an American prison, comparatively to it being a CIA hit?
So a high-level white police officer stumbled onto the fact, was assigned to the investigation of Biggie Smalls, which was a murder that came 6 months after Tupac's. And so he was investigating that. He was one of the top two lead investigators of that murder. And he ends up investigating Death Row Records and stumbles upon the fact that his fellow officers, dozens of his fellow officers, were at all levels of Death Row Records. He asked his superiors what they're doing there, and they told him that you can call them covert agents. All right. So he finds loads of evidence that his fellow police officers killed Tupac Shakur. Okay. And he didn't know completely why. Now, this came out in the movie Biggie and Tupac by the, highly decorated film director, Nick Broomfield. It also came out in the book Labyrinth, which 3 major movie companies tried to make a movie of. Sylvester Stallone was slated to play Russell Poole. Leonardo DiCaprio with DreamWorks was slated to play Russell Poole, and then Johnny Depp, with just in the last 6 months, was supposed to play Russell Poole in a movie that was already announced. We already saw trailers in the movie theater, and it was scrapped at the very last minute from actually coming out. So incredibly powerful forces wanted to stop the story of this police detective finding out about what was really going on in Death Row Records. So I have him in my film saying that he found that Death Row Records was trafficking drugs and guns. I show the evidence that they were also trying to end the peace truces between the Bloods and the Crips, and they had set up the murder of Tupac Shakur. And so Las Vegas Sun reporter Kathy Scott had found that the FBI was actually in the motorcade of Tupac when he was killed. They had him under surveillance at that time. And, of course, there's evidence that was more than just surveillance, that they helped orchestrate that murder of Tupac. But I have a FBI whistleblower saying, he was being paid by the FBI when he was bodyguarding Tupac. I show the evidence that he actually turned on the FBI and told Tupac not to go to Vegas that night. He says he's got documents to prove that that ATF and FBI agents were watching Tupac's murder. And so this is just much of the evidence of U.S. intelligence actually setting up Tupac's murder.
So in regards to that, if Tupac was trying to become an activist and trying to end the drug battles between the Crips versus Bloods on both sides of the coast, there was still the East versus West rap wars that were going on. And Tupac had taken a lot of heat and had his life threatened that if he went and performed on the East Coast, namely New York, that there could be a lot of tension happening that way. And it was vice versa for Biggie Smalls if he traveled from New York to the West. Could this not have been just gang members or music people getting involved and getting things out of hand to make it violent? Because unfortunately, there is a lot of violence that is subjected around the rap/hip-hop music industry.
Well, that's the myth that's created, and not to say that there isn't any violence in the music industry and the rap in particular, but Tupac was never a gang member. And I show that there was at least 5 other attempts on Tupac's life before any of this East Coast, West Coast rap feud stuff. Tupac was, when he first came out with his first political album, police stopped him supposedly for jaywalking, proceeded to bang his head against the curb and choke him unconscious. And I show how police behaviors like that, when they had people in their custody ended up in the death of those victims. And so, there was already attempts on his life. Supposedly off-duty Atlanta police officers ran over Tupac's car in 1993 before there was any talk of any East-West stuff. They smashed the window of his car, according to eyewitnesses, shot at Tupac, missed him, but Tupac rolled out the back, grabbed a guard's gun, shot back, and hit them in the butt as they were holding the gun behind them and running away when a load of guards came out of the cars behind Tupac. So, and Tupac got off completely of that, I showed, because all the evidence showed that this was a botched assassination attempt by police intelligence. And so it's just some of the evidence that they were trying to kill Tupac before there was any notion of an East-West feud. Tupac was living in Atlanta at that time. So he wasn't on the West Coast. He was living on the East Coast. There was no feuds. So I show that the media just cultivated this idea of this East-West feud, and they've done the same things with the Tupac's Black Panther extended family. Tupac's mother was a one-time leader of the Harlem Black Panthers, so they sent fake letters between the New York Panther 21, it was that Fanny Shakur was part of, and Huey Newton's Oakland based national Black Panther office to cause a East Coast versus West Coast feud in that form. So it's just an extension of, show all the evidence that it was the same thing happening from the 60s into the 90s that way.
So what was your thoughts on just a few weeks ago when Suge Knight Jr. went on Twitter? He subsequently deleted the tweet, basically saying that Tupac is alive and well and living, I believe, in Indonesia or Singapore.
It's more diversion from the truth.
Well, define that if you don't mind, because there's a lot of people who believe that he is still alive under the name Machiavelli.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was brilliant and very incredibly talented, and it'd be great if he was still alive. But after talking to his business manager, Watani Himba, talking to his national lawyer, Chokwe Lumumba, talking to his mother at one point, talking to a number of people that were close with him, none of them believed he was alive. His New York trial lawyer I talked to many times, and he doesn't believe he's alive, that Tupac's alive. So, it's just more diversion from what's really going on in terms of the media. Mainstream media just constantly puts out, promotes ideas that take away from the findings of U.S. intelligence's murder of Tupac.
But isn't it just easy to blame the media because they get blamed for everything? They're a high-quality scapegoat on this.
No, mainstream media has done so much cover-up over so many U.S. intelligence operations over the years that I don't think it's easy. I think it's actually harder. It makes it harder to do that. And it's harder to break through to the public because mainstream media is so controlled. So to get out information when, for example, John F. Kennedy and RFK's assassinations, it just took years of hard work by so many writers and researchers and activists that only today, even today, within the last 3 months, the Kennedys and the King families came together to try to get out the idea that, that the government was involved, or at least may have been involved, in the assassinations of Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, RFK, and JFK, and virtually no mainstream media even covered that. So, it's a very hard thing to do.
Well, I understand that, but everybody, as being a part of the media, everybody wants to blame the media for what is truly going on and whether or not they are covering stories up. I like to look at it that they get bored and move on to the next story because it's much easier that way.
But your radio does a better job of this. Your radio is different. Radio, like your radio station, really gets more truth out there, I believe, in terms of these kinds of subjects. And I think print, newspapers don't, television doesn't usually, and they hardly ever did. They mentioned there was a TV program that talked about MK Ultra back in the 70s when U.S. Senate Church Committee was coming out with this stuff on ABC News, and I show part of that in my film, but it's never mentioned again. And people would not be bored of it. I don't think it's very wild, interesting, ideas and stories and news about the CIA. But I think it's control of that forum that never lets it out again. And I show how that control happens through the wealthiest families and how exactly that works.
John Potash is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We are talking about the CIA tonight. How devious are they really? We got a couple minutes here before we got to go to break at the top of the hour. John, in regards to the Tupac Shakur killing then, what about the number one suspect, a gentleman named Orlando Anderson, who claims he was present in the car in Las Vegas from which the gunshots that killed Tupac were fired?
Yeah, he died within about 2 years of Tupac's death. He was murdered. And best evidence, according to Nick Broomfield, who seriously investigated Anderson, is that he got a huge payoff right after Tupac's murder, but the payoff appeared to be that scapegoat, to take that beating in the hotel, to make it look like there was a Bloods Crips, a situation that killed Tupac, because all the best evidence is that it was according to Russell Poole, who was a top police murder detective, says that it was a professional hit. He said, once says on film, this was a professional hit. meaning it was police officers with radios and carefully planned, shooting, precision shooting in order to not kill or even barely. Really, it's thought that Suge Knight didn't get hit at all, even though 13 bullets were coming at Tupac, who's almost half the size of Suge Knight, from Tupac's side into the passenger side, and Suge Knight's driving, and the car was on the passenger side which the shots came from. So it was a very professional job that was done to, murder Tupac.
How do you think Suge Knight has described it then?
Well, he hasn't come out with a whole lot of information about it, except to pretend like he was, really shot in a really dangerous way. But people who've investigated carefully show that they think he just got hit by a shrapnel that bounced off something else and was barely scarred at all. They show him walking the next day up to the hospital while smoking a cigar. He really had not much to say because he was low man on the totem pole as regarding U.S. intelligence's murder of Tupac. But he did. Kathy Scott showed a lot of evidence that he purposely drove away from the area where the hospital was. The hospital was just about a mile down the road. He took a U-turn and went in the opposite direction from the hospital. And he did a number of other things. He ordered the bodyguards behind them. First thing, the bodyguards are usually in their car, but this time he had the bodyguards in the car behind. He ordered the bodyguards not to have guns that night. Him and Reggie Wright Jr., who was a former police officer, whose father was Reggie Wright Sr., who was head of the Compton Police Gang Division. And so they said no guns in Vegas. They took the battery out of the cell phone of the guards, and et cetera.
John, you hold on right there. We're going to step out at the top of the hour. John Potash is our guest tonight. CIA, are they killing off celebrities? We'll find out more. Talking about Kurt Cobain coming up after the break.
Every night on Spaced Out Radio, we have places for you to hang out. Hi, this is Carl. Join our SOR Space Travelers group on Facebook for live chat. On Twitter, using hashtag Spaced Out Radio. You can also join us in our Spreaker chat room. Check us out on Instagram at Dave Scott SOR. All of our archives are free on YouTube at Spaced Out Radio. By the way, I'll be watching you at your window until you do. Bye!
Looking for the stories of the strange and weird that you will find hard to find anywhere else? Check out the SOR Newswire on our website. Our writers, led by Captain Shirk, are scouring the world for the oddest and most bizarre stories we can find. Everything from weird crime to suspenseful and paranormal. We're working hard for you to bring you the most intriguing news of your day. Check out the SOR Newswire at spacedoutradio.com today.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio Live with Dave Scott on the Deep Talk Radio Network.
Find your escape where time has no limits. It's about living today and cherishing the heritage of yesterday. A spirit of adventure for what is new with the nostalgia of the past. Your timepiece is a reflection of who you are. Life surrounded by beauty from the world around us to the soul within. EscapeWatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
The Call of the Wild is in Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is one of the hottest bars and restaurants in the city. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose will rock you like a hurricane all night long. Great food with everything on the menu at $6.95 near the corner of Nelson and Granville. Get your horns up and come rock with us. The Moose Vancouver, the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Hi, George Norrie here. Are you ready for UFO MegaCon, the immersion event? 7 days, 8 nights, 50 new speakers, UFO military witnesses, experiencer groups, skywatches, and so much more. Join me at UFO MegaCon, March 24th through the 30th in Laughlin, Nevada. Truly the one and only new information conference of the year. Now check it out at UFOMegaCon.com. That's UFOMegaCon.com.
The freedom to post what you want, when you want. That's the social media freedom you need. Social Media Freedom is the free app in your app store. No need to worry about going to jail or being shadow banned any longer. It's the freedom to say what you feel. The freedom to know Big Brother isn't watching. It's the way social media is supposed to be. Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free. Download from your app store today.
You know, it's hard being the bad man of ufology, but that's just the way that I like it. This is Chris George Zuger, and I'll be hanging out with Dave Scott and SOR scientist Chris Cogswell for Reality Paranormal, the second Wednesday of every month. And our job is to break it down and come to conclusions as to what is really going on in the supernatural world. I'd love for you to join us right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
We are getting ready to relaunch the SOR Space Travelers Club at spacedoutradio.com. For $5 a month, you can join us for a plethora of features found nowhere else. Hang out in a private chat room during the show and after party. You can check out some exclusive content and a store specifically for you, as well as a private listener forum where you can post your thoughts, stories, and pictures. The SOR Space Travelers Club, coming soon to spacedoutradio.com.
Get your horns up with me on Spaced Out Radio. This is Ron Bumblefoot Thal. Come tune in to SOR where you can hear me rock out with Little Brother Is Watching, the official theme song of Spaced Out Radio. And then come on over to bumblefoot.com where you can find out about my tour schedule, my music, and everything else. Bumblefoot.com keeps you up to date on what I'm doing and the best way to stay in touch with my music and music camps. Sign up for my newsletter at bumblefoot.com and remember, Little Brother Is Watching.
On the first Tuesday of every month, I encourage you to come along for a journey with me, Geraldine Orozco, on The Spiritual You. Together, we will take a look at how to access the highest expression of yourself and change your life. Consciousness, ET contact, health, and wellness, we can talk about it all. So come along for a spiritual ride with me, Geraldine Orozco, on The Spiritual You, only on Spaced Out Radio.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you so much for being with us. Tomorrow night on the show, Susan Shepard joins us to talk about Men in Black and Shadow People. We get going at 9:06 Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern at spacedoutradio.com. We welcome back everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates, KDUN AM 1030 in Reedsport, Oregon, KZFX 93.7 FM in Ridgecrest, California, WQEE 99.1 FM in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead, and we are also on UPRN 107.7 FM in New Orleans. On the digital side, we say hi to each and every one of you listening in on Revolution Radio and Deep Talk Radio. Remember, all of our archives are free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Gaia Scudis. Gaia Scudis is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. You can rock out to Bumblefoot. Go shopping at our Spaced Out Radio store, because you'd look good in one of our t-shirts, hats, hoodies, and so much more. And, of course, we have Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire for you to catch up on all the news as well. John Potash is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio as we are talking about the CIA. They are about a murderous group? Really? Do you believe it? That's what we're getting into tonight. Drugs as weapons against us. As John has a book out on Amazon that you could pick up, or you could check out his movie, Drugs as Weapons Against Us, the CIA War on Musicians and Activists. John, thank you so much for coming on Spaced Out Radio tonight. How are you?
Good, Dave.
Good. I want to get into Kurt Cobain because Nirvana was literally one of the greatest rock bands, grunge bands, to come out of the last nearly 30 years. Hard to believe it's almost 30 years since Nirvana entered the world. And they were a grunge band out of Seattle, really kicked off a major movement there in music that included Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, Jane's Addiction. A lot of great music came out of their Temple of the Dog, which was also fantastic as well. But Nirvana seemed to be heads and shoulders above the rest, led by Kurt Cobain himself, the lead frontman there. And, you know, it was tragic because Kurt became part of the 27 Club when he allegedly took his own life with a shotgun blast to his head back in, I believe, 1994. It is, and it was, a tough time for a lot of people in music. Tell us what you learned about Kurt Cobain.
Well, I learned that Kurt Cobain was more of an activist than I realized. I mean, he did a lot of benefits. He did abortion rights benefits. He did benefits for a group called Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting. He did benefits for AIDS organizations. He was also, mocked some of the corporate leaders and capitalists. And he a book that came out in 1993, about a year before Cobain died, said that quoted him as saying that on the cover of his album Nevermind, which sold 30 million copies, he had originally planned to put all kinds of anarchist essays about how to make your own bomb and anti-capitalist essays. But then he said he thought better of it. He wanted to wait until he got more popular when people might take it more seriously. So this came out before he died, and I argue that being one of the most influential people in the world, the oligarchs were worried about him and his influence. And besides that, before that, though, they even wanted to use him to. I argue that they psychologically profiled a number of musicians and tried to see which ones might be best for helping promote heroin. And because he had a massive stomach problem and had tried heroin, according to his diaries, about 4 or 5 times in 4 years, they decided that they'd put their asset, Courtney Love, next to him. So she, as his album Nevermind was racing up the music charts, all of a sudden Courtney Love introduces herself to him at a party when she was there with Billy Corgan, head of lead singer of Smashing Pumpkins, as her date, leaves Billy Corgan and latches on to Cobain, and they start dating, and she becomes pregnant within a few months, and he does right by her in terms of marrying her, but with a prenuptial agreement. But all the people around Seattle that were friends with him and knew her said that that was the first time he started using heroin daily, is when she, started dating him, and that she does that. She's very manipulative and used heroin to control him. And so, but then towards the end of his life, his lawyer, Rosemary Carroll, says on film, in the film Soaked in Bleach, says that he was already divorcing her. He had, asked her to get a lawyer to help and to change his will, to take her out of his will. And then that the suicide note, the alleged suicide note, was actually a fake, and that looked like someone had tried to copy his handwriting, and she found copies of Cobain's handwriting and attempts to copy it in Courtney Love's bag that Courtney Love had left at her house, because she was actually the lawyer for both Cobain and Courtney Love, Rosemary Carroll. So she says all this on film, and I have part of that in my film. And so, of course, then you find out, I have in my film the fact that they did a blood test on Kurt a month before he died, and it showed that there was no illicit substances in his system at that time. The only substance in his system that was problematic was the Rohypnol, which is roofies, which was Courtney Love's sleep medication, which was legal in England where she was at the time, and she got as a prescription for herself. So, all the evidence shows that she roofied Kurt, and he became, he went into a coma. But when they did the blood test, they found no heroin in the system. And to be a heroin addict, you have to be using daily. Most people know that. But, he wasn't even smoking weed at that time. And the band members around him that were touring with him in Rome all attest to that, too. So what they found in his system, though, when he died, is that he had at least 6 times the amount of heroin that would kill the average person, but 3 times the amount that would kill even a severe addict, according to the experts. And as I say, experts like Cyril Wecht said that, it was a murder made to look like a suicide. And he says he's never seen a case. He's about 81 years old. In all his career, he's never seen a case of someone shooting up a large amount of heroin and proceeding to kill themselves. He says it doesn't make sense. And so that's just some of the evidence I show that, it was a murder. But I also have a guy who says on film that Courtney Love offered him $50,000 to blow Cobain's head off. And after saying that on film for Nick Broomfield for the film Kurt and Courtney, Eldon Hoke mysteriously died within several days. But I have him in my film saying that, and then I have Courtney Love's biological father saying on the radio, because he originally said in his book that he sent me a copy of before he put it out, saying that he had gotten a letter from a guy he accidentally just introduced to Courtney Love. A guy befriended him when he was doing research in Ireland, and Courtney Love, when she had just turned 17, visited him in Ireland. And he introduced her to a guy named Stephen O'Leary. Stephen O'Leary latches on to her, proceeds to take her over to London, and travels with her for 6 weeks. Now, Courtney Love had in her possession 1,000 hits of LSD. And when I said earlier in our interview about the deputy director of MKUltra, Robert Lashbrook, bringing tons of LSD over to London and getting it in as many musicians' hands as possible, Courtney Love proceeded to copy that and got her LSD in as many musicians' hands as possible in the London area. She then proceeded to do the same thing in the Portland music scene, the Los Angeles music scene, and then the Seattle music scene. And best evidence shows that CIA handler, Stephen O'Leary, as I say, did, help her make this happen, but it appears that other handlers continued to guide her for at least until up to the time she, aided in the murder of Kurt Cobain.
Why would she want to kill her husband? Was she jealous of his popularity? Was she tired of the heroin usage? Was she tired of his battle with depression? What was it?
Well, Cobain matched the pattern of John Lennon and Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, and others, where he was manipulated to promote drugs at first, but then once he sobered up and threatened to promote both sobriety and more activism, anti-war and anti-racist activism, he was done away with. And that's the general pattern. So personally, she was, probably worried about him divorcing her because that's what he was doing, according to his lawyer. And but on the other hand, she was probably following instructions, whether she was fully aware of it or not. But her handlers from U.S. intelligence were guiding her. And so, the major cover-up in this international celebrity's death is incredible. I mean, she ends up going to hire a private detective to supposedly look for Cobain several days before they found his body, about a day or two before he actually died. A guy named Tom Grant, who was a former police officer in Los Angeles. And Grant ends up finding the evidence that she was involved in his death. Now, Grant got tons of evidence, including the use of Kurt Cobain's credit card that was in his wallet when he died, used 2 or 3 days after his death, and many other points of evidence that that was a murder and not a suicide. He gives all this evidence to both the Seattle police and then the Los Angeles police, and they all turn it down. They all do nothing with it. And so it's just some of the evidence that this was a high-level murder and not just Courtney Love herself doing it, but Courtney Love doing it on behalf of very powerful figures in our society.
Yeah, but he was known to suffer from depression and anxiety. That was no secret. And it was no secret that he used drugs like heroin and roofies and anything he could get his hands on to try and cope with that. How do we know that it was something more sinister?
Well, my investigation showed that not to be true. And as a counselor, I really have 3 decades of experience in understanding that people that are so productive and so successful with, the way he was putting out lots of music, lots of doing all that touring, all the videos and all that, shows he wasn't going through a debilitating depression. He didn't have debilitating anxiety because he didn't have stage fright. He didn't have problems doing the kind of interviews he did. I have an interview of him within the last year of his life. He had solved his stomach problem, which was the original, reason for even trying opiates in the first place, to solve his stomach problem. He found a cure to it, the medicine. And so I argue and show the evidence that again, it's media myths about this constant depression and this anxiety that might have come out in the media, because no, he was happy. He was, people that I have eyewitnesses from the last hospital that he was kind of pressured into going into, who said he looked completely happy, like playing with his little girl Frances. He was overjoyed with his love for Frances and seeing her, and he was happy to be actually just moving on in his career. And he had plans with Kristen Pfaff from the band Hole, who was leaving Hole, and had plans to do a new form a new group with her. So that's just some of what was really going on in that show.
Very interesting indeed, because it goes against the grain of what everybody has learned. Now, I do realize there is a conspiracy around Kurt Cobain's death where a lot of people do believe that he was murdered rather than committed suicide like the official route. There's been a number of books written on that, including one of the officers who actually worked the case, and it all does seem to turn back to Courtney Love in regards to that. But her band was doing pretty good at that time and gaining popularity off the legs of Nirvana. It never really took off afterwards. Mm-hmm. She tried, but I believe they only had like one album after that really picked up any sort of steam. But in the meantime, you look at Dave Grohl. He went on to start the Foo Fighters, which have become one of the biggest bands in the world now. And the other gentleman, why am I forgetting his name right now?
Chris Novoselic.
Yeah, Chris Novoselic. He's now running for politics, or he ran for politics in the last election. So, I mean, there's a lot going on in regards to what has happened with the surviving members and the surviving family with that. So do you believe then that taking him out was a way for everybody else to kind of move on and move forward into bigger, better things? Is that what it was all about?
Yeah, well, I argue that nothing matches what Nirvana was, and Kurt Cobain was really the heart of Nirvana. Novoselic hasn't done any major music projects that of note, and Cobain had the radical left opinion that that Novoselic has carried forward with politically, but Dave Grohl certainly hasn't at all. And personally, I don't think much of the Foo Fighters. I'm sorry to say, they might have, I think they're riding the coattails of Nirvana, and that's why they're so popular. But really, on their own, I don't think they would have done much. But it's just my opinion on them. Cobain, though, most people know that Cobain was really the most talented and most charismatic and most influential member of the band.
So in regards to his death, as we were speaking with John Potash tonight on Spaced Out Radio about his latest movie, Drugs as Weapons Against Us, the CIA War on Musicians and Activists, is it because taking out Cobain, because he was a leader, in your opinion, in a new movement? Was it more than just activism, but more the fact that he was a leader? Jimi Hendrix was a leader. Tupac Shakur, who we talked about, was a leader. John Lennon was a leader.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, I mean, they also, of course, targeted the heads of the Students for Democratic Society, the largest anti-war movement in the country. They were 100,000 strong before they were split up in 1969. Those, I showed the evidence of how they were targeted. The heads of the Black Panther Party were targeted. And so, when I talked about Robert Lashbrook bringing over those drugs into London, that later that year of 1965, George Harrison's dentist doses George Harrison and John Lennon, puts LSD in their coffee without them knowing it. And George Harrison didn't even know what LSD was at that point. It wasn't some little prank. It was purposeful targeting, and John Lennon was furious about it. And this dentist risks his professional career, risks a lawsuit, risks, being charged criminally with, assaulting their minds and all. It's unbelievable. And so I show that the evidence was that was an MK Ultra, extension of what he did to them. And so I have John Lennon and George Harrison talking about that incident. I have 2 years later, an undercover FBI and MI5 agent, MI5 is British FBI, named David Schneiderman, influenced Mick Jagger to take his first hit of LSD. And then a few hours later, the police came in and busted them and promoted the fact that here he's busted taking LSD. And so, it's promoting it to youth. And meanwhile, so they also would have Mick Jagger under, legal authorities' thumb at that point with that bust. But so that's some of the ways they're using MK Ultra, and I show how it just continues till today that way, where they keep using musicians to promote these drugs. But then they start sobering up, they're neutralized in different ways. So yes, I think they were leaders in, Jimi Hendrix was getting very political at the very end of his life. He dedicated his last album to the Black Panthers, and so was talking about them in interviews. And John Lennon was talking always talking about, ending the Vietnam War. And then, before he was killed, he said he announced that he was going to be leading a Teamsters March in San Francisco and playing music there. So he was already getting back political while also putting out 2 new albums at that time.
Sticking with Cobain for a couple more minutes here, because we only got about 3.5 before we got to go to break at the bottom of the hour. In regards to his death, the way the public reacted and the way the public still will not let this go, who do you think, person-wise, killed him?
I think it was a guy named Alan Wrench who killed him. And Eldon Hoke actually said this to another journalist. He gave the full name. And Alan Wrench was the last person seen with Alden Hoke when he supposedly died on some train tracks. He was supposedly hit by a train by accident, but it's believed that he's murdered. So even in my film, I show that he accidentally starts saying, well, but Alan, I know who did take the money from Courtney Love. It was Alan, and then he cut himself off from saying Wrench. But he says, well, I'll let the FBI catch him. And so, all the evidence shows that Alan Wrench was connected, in some way to covert operations. But that's who I think. I can't prove it, of course, and I don't know for sure.
Well, if Courtney was the one who paid the $50,000 to make the hit happen, would there not be a paper trail on the money?
I don't know. If you pay in cash, I don't know if there's any paper trail.
Well, I mean, there would be something, would there not, about bank accounts, bank receipts, money being taken from that account, unless she was given it, so to speak.
I list so much evidence about so many aspects of this whole situation that shows it was a murder, and the authorities aren't doing anything about all this evidence. I mean, Tom Grant shows so much evidence in his book compilations of all of his investigation. He kept investigating the situation years and years after he was asked to investigate, find out where Kurt Cobain was. And he kept presenting all this evidence to police, and police wouldn't follow up on it. So they wouldn't even, develop the photographs of the murder scene for many years, over a decade after the death. And I have that in my film, a top New York criminal investigator saying he's never seen photographs of the crime scene, not developed. Because it gives, of course, so much evidence of what was going on. And so, it's just some of the stuff that shows that, the authorities just won't follow up on all kinds of evidence besides just a paper trail of the money that might have been given to someone.
Interesting indeed. John, is it one of those situations in the 30 seconds that we'll ever find the true answer to?
I don't know. I suppose if they honest authorities reopen the investigation, maybe we will. I hope we will. But I don't know if it will. Yeah.
I hope so. John, you stay put. We're going to step out here at the bottom of the hour. John Potash is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. He's got a new movie out, and it is called Drugs as Weapons Against Us, the CIA War on Musicians and Activists. You can also go to Amazon.com, pick up Drugs as Weapons Against Us, the CIA's murderous targeting of SDS, Panthers, Hendrix, Lennon, Cobain, Tupac, and other activists as well. While you're waiting for us to come back, head to the Spaced Out Radio store. Check things out. We got something for you to look good in. So we'll talk to you on the other side.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio Live with Dave Scott on the Deep Talk Radio Network.
Coming soon to our website, spacedoutradio.com, is the SOR Space Travelers Club. For just $5 a month, you can get into a private area on our site where you can hang with other listeners in our chat room, post in our forum, and check out a bunch of exclusive content and store that won't be found anywhere else, including a nightly after-show party with Dave. It's going to be the best $5 a month you're going to spend. The SOR Space Travelers, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Hello, this is your guitar man, Ron Bumblefoot Thal, and I have to tell you, I love the response I get for Little Brother is Watching from Spaced Out Radio fans. It's amazing how music can inspire and make people think deeper about what's going on in the supernatural world. You can head over to my website, bumblefoot.com, to check out my music, my guitar workshops, my touring, even check out some of the hot sauces that I'm working on. And make sure you keep on listening, because with Spaced Out Radio, you know Little Brother is watching.
We're bringing scientific thought to the paranormal. Hi there, this is Spaced Out Radio scientist Chris Cogswell. Join me, Chris Zuger, and Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month, where we break down the who from the woo when it comes to everything paranormal. We'll investigate and try to bring sensible answers to those straight and sometimes outlandish questions people have. Hey, not everything has an answer, but we'll do our best. Listen in to Reality Paranormal only on Spaced Out Radio.
Did you know Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi there, this is Tessa Nicole Thomas, and I'm here to take you on a paranormal journey each Saturday and Sunday night. Why change the station when you have it all right here? Together, we'll hang out and share some strange and scary stories. And don't forget, we have Psychic Sundays as well, so come tune in Spaced Out Weekend. We get going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, only at spacedoutradio.com, where we own the night.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch. Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized Escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want, when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Hi there, this is Geraldine Orozco from San Francisco's Bay Area Meditation. I invite you to join me the first Tuesday of every month with Dave Scott for Spaced Out Radio's The Spiritual You. In this fast-paced world we live in, it's time for you to take some time for you. We'll cover every possible subject from powerful meditation to healing techniques to your own intuition and spirituality. So come join us for The Spiritual You.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Hi, George Norrie here. Are you ready for UFO MegaCon, the immersion event? 7 days, 8 nights, 50 new speakers, UFO military witnesses, experiencer groups, skywatches, and so much more. Join me at UFO MegaCon, March 24th through the 30th in Laughlin, Nevada. Truly the one and only new information conference of the year. Now check it out at UFOMegaCon.com. That's UFOMegaCon.com.
Heading to Vancouver and looking for a night on the town? The Moose Vancouver is the bar that never stops rocking until 2 a.m. every night. The Moose has great food with everything on the menu from $6.95 to $8.95. Fantastic, vibrant staff and rock and roll that will bring you back to when the music was real, the hair was long, and the guitars were rockin'. Get your party on at the Moose, Vancouver, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
We've passed the halfway point of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters on the frozen tundra of British Columbia, Canada tonight. Good to have all of you with us. Thank you so much for being here. If you want to head to our Spaced Out Radio store while you're listening, you'd look good in one of our T-shirts, hats, hoodies, lots of swag there for you. It's a good way to support this show. So head on out to our Spaced Out Radio store, click on shop on our website, and you are right there. John Potash is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. He has a new movie out, and I swear you need to check this out. drugsasweaponsmovie.com. If you want to check out the website, you can then buy the video, buy the movie. He's also got a great book out in regards to this subject called Drugs as Weapons Against Us, the CIA's murderous targeting of SDS, Panthers, Hendrix, Lennon, Cobain, Tupac, and other activists. You can find that on Amazon. John, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me on, Dave.
I want to get into John Lennon, and then we're going to switch our focus over to MK Ultra, because that's really what the movie is quite a bit about. Let's get into John Lennon here. I mean, there are a lot of questions surrounding Mark David Chapman. I mean, of course, there's the ominous photo of just hours before Chapman shot him that he was signing autographs for Chapman, which is a little weird and eerie at the same time. But nonetheless, John Lennon was somebody, he was an activist. He was all for peace. We all know that. He was very, very active on the scene to try and promote one love for everybody. Good man. Very good man. The Beatles were split up, although they were slowly talking about resurrecting the Beatles with Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr, of course. Take us down this road of why you think John Lennon was actually a CIA hit.
Well, so early in his career, as I say, best evidence is that he was one of the musicians that was targeted with the MK Ultra, program that went over to London with the instructions of the MK Ultra deputy director to get the LSD in as many musicians' hands as possible. And the dentist then doses him and George Harrison. And so Lennon was, furious at first, but then there were so many undercover agents and so many other people trying to influence Lennon to trip again, particularly in the United States, because there was a massive program around this, MK Ultra with Timothy Leary saying he was working for this. He was knowingly working for the CIA from 1963 onwards. The huge amounts, financial backers of Timothy Leary, the Mellon Hitchcock family who owned Mellon Bank and Gulf Oil. And it started these psychedelic headquarters in many places in the U.S., but also Mexico, where Leary, that was Leary's group to promote psychedelics. The Human Ecology Fund, the CIA front group, was testing LSD in colleges, 45 colleges around the U.S., but also in hospitals and in prisons. And that was what Leary was first getting the money from, to test LSD on Harvard students, but it was also being tested on other students. So they were really using all different kinds of means to push and promote LSD in the U.S. So when Lennon came over to the U.S. in about 1966, again to the U.S., he goes to a party in Los Angeles near the Laurel Canyon area, where there was a hotbed of both tons of musicians that had instant fame. Many of these musicians are really virtually all of them were connected to either the military and or the wealthiest families in the country. And Dave McGowan's book, Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon, talks about this scene and why it's so insidious. There's also the largest film studio in the world, arguably, at least the most sophisticated, Lookout Mountain film studio that was owned by the Air Force. And loads of stars and directors had signed confidentiality agreements to produce films there. It produced 19,000 films, and we don't know the titles because they were all confidential, but they used these stars and directors, Walt Disney and all these top people. And so they were a number of these people were also involved in these parties in these Laurel Canyon scenes where they're having sex and drug parties, like orgies, and passing out tons of acid and cocaine and heroin, even as early as about 1964, and on into the later 60s. But here is John Lennon at a party with one of these stars who organized these parties, David Crosby, who comes from the Van Cortlandt family, which people in New York know about because Van Cortlandt Expressway is named after the Van Cortlandt family. So he comes from an extremely wealthy family. And so he's influenced to trip a second time, him and George Harrison both. And after that, he decides, well, it's not so bad after all, I'll trip more. But by about 1968 or 69, he says he thought he was losing his mind on acid, according to the biographies, and he wanted to stop using acid. And Yoko Ono and someone else influenced him to not stop using acid. But he was felt like it was hurting him so much that he considered that he was getting anxious before shows. He was throwing up before every show because he was getting so anxious. LSD can do that. It can really make you lose emotional control. I know from my counseling with a lot of people that have used drugs. But he also, his mind was getting so hurt by the acid that he would consider tree panning, or drilling a hole in his skull to expand his consciousness. And so finally, in the early 70s, he gets away from the limelight, gets away from the drugs. He just focuses on raising his son for 5 years. He goes into, just kind of a little bit of seclusion, obviously, for about 5 years in the 70s. About 78 or 79, he starts to come out of that seclusion and works on his 2 new albums. And is just about to release them at the end of 79 into 1980 when he's assassinated. And so Fenton Bressler, as I told you before, was a British lawyer and a crime reporter for a daily newspaper over in Britain, does this investigation from 1980 to 1987, 7-year investigation finding that the CIA was involved in both hypnotizing and conditioning Mark David Chapman to carry through what he did in firing his gun at Lennon, but also they were working with the CIA. I mean, they were working with a hitman for the CIA, and that Jose Sanjanis Perdomo become the doorman at the Dakota to also shoot Lennon, it's argued, and to make sure the job was successful in assassinating John Lennon. And it was just a few months before he was getting his full citizenship, as an American citizen. So the Reagan administration, Bressler argues, and another top music writer named Philip Strongman wrote in his book about John Lennon. He says that the Reagan administration was worried about John Lennon having too much influence as an American citizen against the right-wing policies of the Reagan administration that was coming in.
Very intriguing indeed in regards to that. And with Lennon, I mean, let's face it. I mean, he was a pioneer. People acted on his every word. They waited on his every word. And when you have someone that powerful in the music industry, and music at that point was still an extremely powerful medium, you could see why that was going to happen, or could have potentially happened.
Sure.
Because Mark David Chapman, much like Sirhan, there are times where it's been quoted in other interviews that he doesn't recall what happened.
Right. And the head of one of the largest New York police precincts said that he told Fenton Bressler that Chapman appeared to be programmed, in his opinion. And he says, I know what you're going to make of that term, but that's just the way I saw it. He appeared to be programmed. And, so I show you the best evidence that they did use drugs and hypnotism on him. But a police officer trained Mark David Chapman in shooting and helped make him a sharpshooter, but also gave him the hollow point bullets with which he killed John Lennon. So here's a police officer, and I show the evidence that the CIA does work with police intelligence to carry out a number of these, to help with these kinds of operations. And the best evidence is that that's what this Atlanta police officer did in, taking Chapman under his wing and training him, and then giving him the bullets with which to kill Lennon, because hollow points are actually supposed to be illegal in the U.S. and only police can get a hold of those. But show more evidence about how Chapman traveled around the world with a janitor's salary or a security guard's salary, and that's part of the evidence. There's a lot more evidence, of course, of how they manipulated Chapman and hypnotized him and used drugs in that process to turn him into what he became.
I want to get to some audience questions here because we do have them piling up. BTO is asking you, John, is it just about these supposed popular music leaders being MK Ultra'd, or perhaps many of these musicians sell their souls for the fame and prestige and just go along with it?
No, I do think there's a number of musicians that sold their soul for the fame and went along with it. And I mentioned them, and as I say, David Crosby, I think, was one of them. I think a guy named John Phillips of the Mamas and the Papas was another of them. And Phillips was an absolutely bizarre figure. The Mamas and Papas were, a talented group. Mama Cass was a great singer. But John Phillips was manipulating the group with a load of LSD early on. And he was in and out of the military doing all kinds of things. But he ends up, his daughter's Mackenzie Phillips, who was in One Day at a Time, if you remember that TV show.
Yes.
She, on her wedding night, she came out saying to the media, it's you can find it all over the media, she says her father raped her on her wedding night and then proceeded to have a 10-year sexual relationship with her while she's married. Totally bizarre. This guy's having a 10-year sexual relationship with his daughter. And so he is a ugly figure who, yes, sold his soul for instant stardom as the MK Ultra. And yes, there's loads more like that. And I mentioned, a number of them. But some of them went back and forth. I mean, so like Jim Morrison, I show the evidence that his father was head of the ship that started the Gulf of Tonkin, that carried through with the Gulf of Tonkin incident that started the Vietnam War. And I show a picture of him with his father on that ship when he was a teenager, just before a year or so before he became a rock star. And he's got short hair in the picture, but then he grew his hair long, and became the instant rock star. But I think that he, did have some talent, of course, and that was really bright. And he turned on his family, and I didn't have time to show all this in my book and film, but he turned on his family and died young too, at 27. But so I think there's a lot of gray areas on how many sold their soul, whereas how many were manipulated and all that.
All right, let's get to Everett's question. He's got a pair of them here. He's asking, John, how is the CIA getting into these musicians' circles?
Well, they've got the money and the agents to start the management groups for these music bands that can get them the shows, that can own the radio stations and the media and the venues, and can just, get, for example, when Jimi Hendrix got instant stardom in Britain, that's where he started out. Because he wasn't making it big in the U.S., but he made it big in Britain. All of a sudden, he didn't know how to handle all the concerts and shows that were being offered. So into his life, inserted in his life, is an MI6 agent. He was this Mike Jeffries, who said he was former MI6, but all the evidence shows they continue to be MI6 undercover. So it's just having the money and the time, because of the secret money backing of U.S. intelligence is just some of the ways that they can get into their lives. But they're also, there's plenty of examples how undercover agents are inserted as potential lovers. For Huey Newton, for example, the evidence I have in the film is tons of Black Panthers, including Bobby Seale, who started in Black Panthers nationally with Huey Newton, saying that Elaine Brown appeared to be an undercover agent who entered Huey Newton's life and manipulated him to get him to try cocaine and develop a problem with cocaine, but also to dismantle the Black Panther Party, sadly enough.
Eerie indeed. Let's go to Everett's second part of the question. He is asking, are they recruiting, as in the CIA, audio producers, engineers, other musicians, or other operatives potentially posing as fans?
I think so. Trying to think of examples of that. Off the top of my head, I don't have any particular ones, except for I remember that there was someone in the music business that, with Yoko Ono, had talked John Lennon into the fact that he should keep using LSD when he wanted to get away from it because he thought he was losing his mind on LSD, tons of bad trips and all. That appears to be an example of, one of these guys that were intelligence, but, Mike Jeffrey's a more obvious example with Tupac Shakur. Suge Knight's a very obvious example. And with Cobain, not only Courtney Love, but her whole, Eric Erlandson appears to be helping. It was a guitarist for Hole, Courtney Love's band, and he was the last person seen with Kristen Pfaff, who I had mentioned was supposed to be doing a project with Kurt Cobain before he died. She had already left Hole by that point. She was sick of them. Erlandson had gotten her to be, a romantic relationship, and he gotten Kristen Pfaff addicted to heroin. She sobered up, got away from Hole, and he was the last person seen with her when she supposedly overdosed on heroin. But her family thinks she was murdered by Erlandson. And we don't know for sure, but there's a lot of evidence against Erlandson that he's very shady and worrisome. But so those are some examples of that. I don't know how many are out there. I'm sure there's tons more out there that I just don't know about.
But the CIA has been known to recruit women. And let's face it, with rock and roll, backstage, if you're good looking enough, backstage passes are easy to get. For a lot of women out there, if you want to go party with the musicians. I mean, it's an easy way to try and manipulate a situation.
Right. But they also, in their own intelligence documents, say use women and drugs to get at these musicians. And I quote some of those U.S. intelligence documents that were found by the U.S. Senate Church Committee when they, investigated all that the CIA was doing. But it's also using men. A guy who developed a relationship with Janis Joplin, ended up telling a previous girlfriend that he had been working for the FBI, and then he got engaged to Janis Joplin to be married until she found out he had a whole other family, a wife and kids in another state, and he was still married. And so this guy, all the evidence shows that he was working for U.S. intelligence. And so he gotten Janis Joplin addicted to amphetamines and started hurting her life before she became even, really famous. But I show out the evidence of other agents that probably manipulated her to develop that heroin problem, too.
It always comes down to heroin, doesn't it?
It's very sad, yeah.
It's a terrible drug.
It's also cocaine. It's also, with Huey Newton and Afeni Shakur, it was cocaine, though.
All right, let's move on here. We got more questions coming up. Gary is asking, how come this doesn't seem to be happening in country music?
Well, I didn't get to investigate country music. I don't know. there is probably some real good country music out there, but the only country music I know of tends to be much more conservative and not really very political, except for the Dixie Chicks, though. They were more political country music, and they were censored. They were banned for a little bit, or at least censored for a while. I haven't explored much of what happens in country music, except for the only example I can think is Dixie Chicks. Yeah.
Me either, my friend. We're going to try it. We got about 90 seconds. We'll try and sneak in one more question here. And Megan is asking in regards to if you have any elaboration or knowledge on Project Blue Light.
I've never heard of Project Blue Light. If Megan wants to have more information on it, I'd love to hear about it.
Absolutely. It is, let me see if I can find it here, because I should have probably looked it up before I asked that. But sometimes you just ask on the fly when you are close to the end. Yeah, so Megan, we'll get you to give a little bit of a description in regards to that, and then we can re-ask the question in the next hour. We have John Potash on for another 30 minutes here on Spaced Out Radio. It's going to be a good time. We're going to get more into MK Ultra, because that's where this all leads to, right, John?
Yeah, that was the umbrella project with 199 sub-projects, yeah.
Scary indeed. Scary indeed. If it is all true, that's what John's evidence points out to. Remember, you can go check out John's book on Amazon. I highly suggest you do. Go to Amazon.com, pick up Drugs as Weapons Against Us, the CIA's murderous targeting of SDS, Panthers, Hendrix, Lennon, Cobain, Tupac, and other activists. And, of course, he has a brand new movie out on the same book. It's called Drugs as Weapons Against Us, the CIA War on Musicians and Activists. It's definitely something you want to check out. Definitely something you would want to add to your library. So we're going to get into the whole MK Ultra aspect and your questions if you're in one of the chat rooms or on Twitter at #SpacedOutRadio. Right after this, Hour 3 of Spaced Out Radio is up next. Stay tuned. At spacedoutradio.com, we have a little bit of everything for you to stay up late. So while you're there, check out our SOR Newswire, where our team brings you stories of the weird and strange to the WTF from around the globe. News on Bigfoot, UFOs, paranormal, Darwinian-type crime tales. It's the stories that the mainstream media usually won't touch. Well, we got them all on the SOR Newswire, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Come hang out with Spaced Out Radio, where we own the night. This is Carl. You can follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, and during the show, use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio to chat with us live. On Instagram, at Dave Scott SOR. On Facebook, give our page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. SOR archives are free on YouTube at Spaced Out Radio. Come join us, or I will come join you. See you at your window.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio Live with Dave Scott on the Deep Talk Radio Network.
The Call of the Wild is in Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is one of the hottest bars and restaurants in the city. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose will rock you like a hurricane all night long. Great food with everything on the menu at $6.95 near the corner of Nelson and Granville. Get your horns up and come rock with us. The Moose Vancouver, the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
Get your horns up with me on Spaced Out Radio. This is Ron Bumblefoot THAL. Come tune in to SOR where you can hear me rock out with Little Brother Is Watching, the official theme song of Spaced Out Radio. And then come on over to bumblefoot.com where you can find out about my tour schedule, my music, and everything else. Bumblefoot.com keeps you up to date on what I'm doing and the best way to stay in touch with my music and music camps. Sign up for my newsletter at bumblefoot.com and remember, Little Brother Is Watching.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
We are getting ready to relaunch the SOR Space Travelers Club at spacedoutradio.com. For $5 a month, you can join us for a plethora of features found nowhere else. Hang out in a private chat room during the show and after party. You can check out some exclusive content and a store specifically for you, as well as a private listener forum where you can post your thoughts, stories, and pictures. The SOR Space Travelers Club, coming soon to spacedoutradio.com.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Hi, George Norrie here. Are you ready for UFO MegaCon, the immersion event? 7 days, 8 nights, 50 new speakers, UFO military witnesses, experiencer groups, skywatches, and so much more. Join me at UFO MegaCon, March 24th through the 30th in Laughlin, Nevada. Truly the one and only new information conference of the year. Now check it out at UFOMegaCon.com. That's UFOMegaCon.com.
On the first Tuesday of every month, I encourage you to come along for a journey with me, Geraldine Orozco, on The Spiritual You. Together, we will take a look at how to access the highest expression of yourself and change your life. Consciousness, ET contact, health, and wellness, we can talk about it all. So come along for a spiritual ride with me, Geraldine Orozco, on The Spiritual You, only on Spaced Out Radio.
The freedom to post what you want, when you want. That's the social media freedom you need. Social Media Freedom is the free app in your app store. No need to worry about going to jail or being shadow banned any longer. It's the freedom to say what you feel. The freedom to know Big Brother isn't watching. It's the way social media is supposed to be. Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free. Download from your app store today.
You know, it's hard being the bad man of ufology, but that's just the way that I like it. This is Chris George Zuger, and I'll be hanging out with Dave Scott and SOR scientist Chris Cogswell for Reality Paranormal, the second Wednesday of every month. And our job is to break it down and come to conclusions as to what is really going on in the supernatural world. I'd love for you to join us right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Find your escape where time has no limits. It's about living today and cherishing the heritage of yesterday. A spirit of adventure for what is new, with the nostalgia of the past. Your timepiece is a reflection of who you are. Life surrounded by beauty from the world around us to the soul within. EscapeWatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have each and every one of you with us. Tomorrow night on the show, Susan Shepard joins us. We're talking shadow people, we're talking men in black, and so much more at 9:06 Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern at spacedoutradio.com. Hi to everyone listening in on KDUN AM 1030 in Reedsport, Oregon, KZFX 93.7 FM in Ridgecrest, California, WQEE 99.1 FM in Noonan, Georgia, UPRN 107.7 FM in New Orleans, and on the digital side, everyone at Revolution Radio and Deep Talk Radio. Good to have you with us. Remember, all of our archives are free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Gaiascutus. Gaiascutus is your password. Nobody knows what it means, but the Clam has set the password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot. Go shopping at our Spaced Out Radio store while you're listening into the show, because you'd look good in some of our swag. And, of course, read up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire and so much more. Final time tonight, we introduce our guest, John Potash. He is the author of Drugs as Weapons Against Us, the CIA's murderous targeting of SDS, Panthers, Hendrix, Lennon, Cobain, Tupac, and other activists. He's also got a movie out on this book that's recently been released, Drugs as Weapons Against Us, the CIA War on Musicians and Activists. That can be found on Amazon, and you can rent it on Vudu, YouTube, Google Play, iTunes, lots of places to get it. John, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
It's good to be with you, Dave. It's good talking to you.
I want to get to some audience questions here because they are piling up a little bit here. Let's get to BTO, who is asking, are these individuals who are MK Ultra'd perhaps clones or easily manipulated, since lots of celebrities, including musicians, look nothing like their supposed parents or were born and raised in some military base?
I just don't know about that. I'm sorry. I haven't heard anything about that.
Not a problem. We can move on. Let's go to Jason. He is asking, aren't we just dancing around the dark or satanic nature of the CIA?
No, I think we're talking about the dark nature of the CIA, and if you talk about satanic rituals are used by cults, and I do talk about some cults in some parts of my book. When it comes, I mentioned the Manson family, how they were part of the Laurel Canyon music scene, and they were also part of the Process Church. I show the evidence that there are links to the Process Church, which was a cult that was shown to be using the same tactics. They were a national group that was shown to be using the same tactics as the MK Ultra sub-project that did affect the hypnosis and drugging of people to cause them to do what they wanted them to do. And really they used child, sex abuse of kids between the ages of 3 and 8 years old to cause dissociative identity disorder, which was part of one of the MK Ultra projects. And I don't get into it in the movie much, but in the book I talk about it during the Courtney Love chapter, because at least 2 women testified to this, that they were part of that project, that MK Ultra sub-project. And it was when President Clinton held hearings revealing a lot of stuff about what was going on behind the scenes with different experiments. And so in these federal hearings, they testified with their counselor. Their counselor introduced the whole subject to them, talked about MK Ultra, talked about, all that was happening. She said she was given 1 week to prepare for this. And in that week, I can't remember how many, it was something to the effect of 15 to 20 other counselors said that they had, many, they had a number of clients that were just like the ones that she was having testify in these federal hearings, that had gone through sexual abuse and druggings from the ages of between 3 and 8 years old, as Courtney Love said in a letter to her father, had happened to her, and it caused dissociative identity disorder. As a counselor, I have some expertise in that, in trauma work like that, and it's just known that the brain's vulnerable at those ages, and so that's what can happen. And so that's some of their projects, but these satanic cults actually carry out the exact same steps that the MK Ultra does. And a top psychologist in trauma, gave a speech about this, how it's found that these cults were so completely copying the CIA work that it's clear that it was coming from some central group like U.S. intelligence or CIA. But in terms of that area of Laurel Canyon, I talked about before about the Air Force Lookout Mountain movie studio is there. And Dave, you said you looked up project. It was actually called Bluebeam, and that was the manipulation of the movie industry. And now I don't get into that much, but I do talk about Lookout Mountain and how that supposedly ended in 1969, but it was said to go on much longer than that. And whenever it did end, it's obvious that it just moved to another even larger studio somewhere else, because it's obvious that Hollywood is very manipulated, and a lot of these movies are very controlled these days.
All right, moving on to another question. This one comes from Gary in regards to the music industry and everything you have looked into. Do you believe then that television shows like American Idol or America's Got Talent are rigged for this specific cause?
Sorry, I just don't know about that. I've seen some of these shows, but I don't know much about American Idol and these other shows too much.
All right. Let's see where we are here in regards to the questions now. And I think we are clear for right now. So let's move on to, or BTO just had one pop in. We'll get this one in here. And with regards to what Megan shared regarding Project Blue Light, which is synonymous with Project Bluebeam, are many of these musicians actually potentially holograms? Man, this gets back to the old days of Rick Astley. Remember that?
I don't think so. No, but I don't know. They used Tupac hologram just to have him do a song that he had done with Snoop Dogg when Snoop Dogg was at Coachella doing the Coachella Music Festival.
Yes,
but no, I don't know if I don't really know anything about any other musicians being just holograms. Sorry to say. But, in terms of these music shows, I will say that I have read the evidence that some of these people that were in the Laurel Canyon scene, and Dave McGowan speaks to this more in Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon, and I have him in my film, and I talk about his work for about a minute or so, or a minute and a half in my film, about the Laurel Canyon scene. He shows how some of these musicians got their start with American Bandstand and some of these other popular shows that, they were kind of given the quick instant stardom in some of these shows. And then they, manipulated some of the music scene. So I could certainly see that it could be happening, still with the shows like American Idol. But I just didn't investigate American Idol and the other similar shows.
Right. All right. Moving on to MK Ultra, because this is obviously a big case that happened through the CIA, where they wanted to see how they could manipulate people. And why not go for the entertainment industry, where many people look at these people as not only celebrities, but heroes, if we could call them that, and idols. I mean, that's always scary when that happens. I mean, we see it even today in professional sports and music and everything in between. So with MK Ultra, for people who may not understand, because we do have listeners who may not be familiar with it, what about is it? What is it about?
So the MK Ultra document said it's about the use of drugs as unconventional warfare. And I just showed the evidence that warfare, we think of warfare in foreign lands, but that warfare actually was against anyone who protested the oligarchs, racist pro-war agenda. And so, one document talked about LSD. That happened to be a very popular drug amongst, in MK Ultras I've been talking about. But there was many others. They tested 36 different drugs on soldiers, thousands of soldiers, and kept retesting and surveying these soldiers for what was going on with the, after the experiment with the drugs. And so some other drugs people might know about are ecstasy or MDMA, or now they call it Molly. And a good example of what was going on with that is the fact that I have in my film a guy named Wouter Basson, who was head of chemical warfare in South Africa during apartheid. And during the Truth and Reconciliation Commission hearings, his assistant said that Wouter Basson ordered him to manufacture a ton of ecstasy. And Basson was also caught dealing ecstasy in black communities. Now, was he trying to just have them all be, happy and on this drug? No. Best evidence and all the studies show that it hurts people's memories in a major way. And in terms of really, they say, just several hits to 10 hits can really start hurting your verbal memory. And that's just not, well known, because there are groups. I talked earlier about the Human Ecology Fund. It was a CIA front group that gave all this money for the colleges and the prisons and the hospitals to test, psychedelics. And now there's a new version of that. The best evidence shows that some of the same funders and the same links are there with a group called the Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies, the Hefter Institute. Hefter Institute's funded a lot by the Rockefellers, who I talked about before, who helped start the CIA. The Pritzkers are a billionaire family that funds the MAPS. And the final biggest psychedelic promoting foundation is the Beckley Foundation, which started by an aristocrat in England that started the idea of tree panning, that idea that Lennon almost took up, sadly enough, of drilling a hole in your skull to apparently expand your consciousness. So these groups have incredible amounts of money to give to professors around the country just to promote psychedelics, just to promote ecstasy, supposedly for PTSD, when there's great techniques for PTSD that I've been trained in, such as EMDR and another technique, but EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which has no side effects like drugs, and they're pushing ecstasy for PTSD treatment. And they're pushing LSD for all kinds of supposed treatment and other drugs. And so, they get loads of articles in newspapers that pretend like all these drugs are actually healthy for us and good for you and not problematic. And really a lot of international studies and some international press and international colleges are less controlled. You see all the negative problem, all the negative aspects of these drugs and the problems they can cause. And so that's a little bit on MK Ultra. Now, it's also found that, they've manipulated rappers to promote Molly. Eminem was promoting Molly before he sobered up. Wu-Tang Clan was had a DEA agent who was working for both the FBI and the DEA, who was formerly part of a mafia family, and a guy named Michael Caruso was one of the largest ecstasy dealers in New York, and he gets into Wu-Tang Clan, becomes personal manager for 2 members of Wu-Tang Clan. Village Voice then comes out with the cover story saying he's actually undercover for DEA and FBI, and the Wu-Tang immediately fires him. But before they fired him, he had gotten them to come to all these big parties he was throwing with ecstasy and women, pushing ecstasy on the rappers and on everyone else that came to these huge parties.
Interesting. Very, very interesting indeed. John Potash is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We've got him for about another 8 minutes here before we got to call it the night and get to the news of the night on the SOR Newswire. John, in regards to MK Ultra and the way it has been broadband, there has been a lot of people who've been on this show talking about how this whole project has been about trying to control people and that it is still a project going on today. Did you notice that as well?
Yeah, I had to stop my research at a certain point to try to, get it into a book form. But yeah, the evidence appeared to still be coming to me, even after I had to really stop the intense research. And it doesn't appear to have ever ended. It just, whistleblowers, CIA and FBI whistleblowers have said that these programs continue just under different names. When John F. Kennedy, President John Kennedy, found out about MK Ultra, he put a squash on it and, had a new CIA director, end it. And, but they continued it behind his back. And of course, then he was assassinated. And then, so they changed the name to MK Search. And then, when they were found out again by the U.S. Senate Church Committee, they then ended it. But, researchers say they believe it continued under a new name even after MK Search. So same thing, an FBI whistleblower also said the same thing about the FBI's counterintelligence program, which targeted leftists in general, but really brutally targeted the Black Panther Party. And, this whistleblower, Wes Swearingen, I have in my film, and show the quotes of his where he says it continued under different names, the counterintelligence program. So yes, the best evidence is that all these programs continue going in different, under different names.
Was it about trying to control the population, or was it about trying to get an upper hand on the enemies of the country?
I think best evidence is that it was trying to control the population, particularly idealistic youth who are anti-war and were pro-civil rights. And, yes, it was about stopping them. They didn't want this change to happen. They were anti-integration and anti-civil rights, and they were trying to stop those movements. But, thankfully the activists prevailed in terms of, civil rights legislation. But in terms of anti-war movement, there's been perpetual war, obviously, so that hasn't been as effective. Obviously, activists that do things to help stop the Vietnam War.
Do you believe that it is a project that is still continuing today?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, they're definitely continuing it in all different kinds of ways, and so there's loads of targeting of. They're just using more technology, for this kind of targeting. And it's happening, on the internet. It's happening with the NSA turning into a 40 to 60,000, member group. And so Edward Snowden's blown the whistle, on the NSA. But he's told how many different programs are watching us constantly and, targeting us in different ways. And Julian Assange has blown the whistle on some of these things too.
It is kind of eerie that something like that is still going on, and we have had people up here, even in Canada, who have stated that they have been, part of this MK Ultra type project as well, and that's seriously a little bit intriguing when you think about the fact that this is a United States program and they are targeting people, even allies such as Canadian people on this. Why do you think they are expanding it? What kind of tests do you think they are trying to prove at this time that they may not already have the answers to?
Well, in Canada, I showed an example of that. They targeted a popular socialist like congressperson in Canada. I forget what you call them in Canada, but he was like a top leftist. He was a socialist, and his wife had gone to the hospital for depression in Montreal. It was the University of Montreal, I guess it is. Sadly, came under Ewan Cameron's watch, and he was working for MK Ultra, and proceeded to give her LSD again and again, and then put her through massive doses, overly high doses of ECT, electroconvulsive shock treatment, and ruined her mind. And so a lot of Canadians actually won a lawsuit against the U.S. government around this. But, it was just happening. They were doing this to try to hurt different leftists all over the world.
Very intriguing. We only got about 2 minutes left with you tonight, my friend, and it's a show that has absolutely flown on by, and we say thank you for coming on the show and really, really helping us out and bringing us this topic forward. How fun was it to make your movie in regards to this?
Well, it was kind of fun, and of course, any kind of art is pretty tedious also. But I kind of enjoyed it, even though it was very hard work. I just enjoyed finding a lot of these people I quote in my book saying it in one film, and getting them in the movie. I enjoyed working with a radio producer who interviewed Hank Harrison to get me and him on the radio at the same time, so I could try to get him to reveal some of the stuff he revealed to me on the phone, which he did. And so it was exciting to get it all together.
And once again, where can people find your movie?
So my film, you can buy my film on Amazon, at Barnes & Noble, Best Buy, Target, Walmart, etc. You can also rent it on Vimeo, Vudu, iTunes, Microsoft Xbox, Google Play, and YouTube Rent. You can go to my website, drugsasweapons.com, or to get more on the movie itself, drugsasweaponsmovie.com, and it's got links to all these places I just talked about, and you can also see the trailer on there. So thanks so much, Dave, for helping me get the word out.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, John, because I think you got some pretty good work that you are working on there. We want to make sure that we give you the attention that you deserve about it. And I want to give out your website once again, in case anybody wants to check it on out. drugsasweaponsmovie.com is your website. And of course, you can go to Amazon and pick up his book, Drugs as Weapons Against Us, the CIA's Murderous Targeting of SDS, Panthers, Hendrix, Lennon, Cobain, Tupac, and Other Activists. And once again, that is on Amazon. John Potash, thank you so much for being on Spaced Out Radio tonight. Very much appreciate it.
Thank you, Dave.
Coming up next, I'm going to get into my blog that I wrote on the SOR Newswire coming on up. We've given Olaf Phillips a night off, so you got me. We're talking about it and the thought of the day coming up next.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio Live with Dave Scott on the Deep Talk Radio Network.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. We have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Hello, this is your guitar man, Ron Bumblefoot Thal, and I have to tell you, I love the response I get for Little Brother is Watching from Spaced Out Radio fans. It's amazing how music can inspire and make people think deeper about what's going on in the supernatural world. You can head over to my website, bumblefoot.com, to check out my music, my guitar workshops, my touring, even check out some of the hot sauces that I'm working on. And make sure you keep on listening, because with Spaced Out Radio, you know Little Brother is watching.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Heading to Vancouver and looking for a night on the town? The Moose Vancouver is the bar that never stops rocking until 2 a.m. every night. The Moose has great food with everything on the menu from $6.95 to $8.95. Fantastic, vibrant staff and rock and roll that will bring you back to when the music was real, the hair was long, and the guitars were rocking. Get your party on at the Moose Vancouver, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Did you know Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi there, this is Tessa Nicole Thomas, and I'm here to take you on a paranormal journey each Saturday and Sunday night. Why change the station when you have it all right here? Together, we'll hang out and share some strange and scary stories. And don't forget, we have Psychic Sundays as well, so come tune in Spaced Out Weekend. We get going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, only at spacedoutradio.com, where we own the night.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
We're bringing scientific thought to the paranormal. Hi there, this is Spaced Out Radio scientist Chris Cogswell. Join me, Chris Zuger, and Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month, where we break down the who from the woo when it comes to everything paranormal. We'll investigate and try to bring sensible answers to those straight and sometimes outlandish questions people have. Hey, not everything has an answer, but we'll do our best. Listen in to Reality Paranormal only on Spaced Out Radio.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch. Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized Escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Hi there, this is Geraldine Orozco from San Francisco's Bay Area Meditation. I invite you to join me the first Tuesday of every month with Dave Scott for Spaced Out Radio's The Spiritual You. In this fast-paced world we live in, it's time for you to take some time for you. We'll cover every possible subject from powerful meditation to healing techniques to your own intuition and spirituality. So come join us for The Spiritual You.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Hi, George and Ori here. Are you ready for UFO MegaCon, the immersion event? 7 days, 8 nights, 50 new speakers, UFO military witnesses, experiencer groups, skywatches, and so much more. Join me at UFO MegaCon, March 24th through the 30th in Laughlin, Nevada. Truly the one and only new information conference of the year. Now check it out at UFOMegaCon.com. That's UFOMegaCon.com.
Coming soon to our website, spacedoutradio.com, is the SOR Space Travelers Club. For just $5 a month, you can get into a private area on our site where you can hang with other listeners in our chat room, post in our forum, and check out a bunch of exclusive content and store that won't be found anywhere else, including a nightly after-show party with Dave. It's going to be the best $5 a month you're going to spend. The SOR Space Travelers, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want, when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
We've rounded third. We are heading for home tonight on the mighty SOR. Dave Scott sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters in the frozen Canadian tundra, broadcasting to you, and I hope you are warm and welcome here with us. Thank you so much for tuning on in. Remember, while you're listening to the show, if you want to support us, go to our store. Go to our Spaced Out Radio store, because you would look good in one of our T-shirts, one of our hats, one of our hoodies, socks, towels, whatever. We got it. Go get it. It would look good on you. So you could do that while we're waiting for you here. TikTok. Just kidding. Moving on here. Normally at this time we do the weird, the wacky, the WTF in the SOR Newswire. So we're going to fire up the music for that. The news is always changing, which is why we bring you the SOR News Wire, brought to you by Paranoia Magazine and ParanoiaMagazine.com. The SOR News Wire can be found at SpacedOutRadio.com by clicking on our news tab, as we keep you up to date on the stories that usually don't make it to the mainstream. And when we thank our intrepid news director, Captain Shirk, for finding us all of those great stories. She is a fantastic newsie, as we call him in the biz. But tonight we're doing things a little bit different. We gave Olaf Phillips a night off, and I want to get into my blog. If you don't know, every week I write a blog. Usually it comes out on Saturday night, early Sunday morning. Now, I wrote mine yesterday because of it being a holiday. Down south, it was President's Day, and up here in Canada, we have this holiday called Family Day. Yes, the politicians felt there needed to be a statutory holiday up here a few years ago. So we got Family Day here. It's kind of cool. So I wrote my blog yesterday because I had a couple of questions come up. It all started on February 8th, which was a Friday night, when we had Flat Earther Ronald Farnham on the show. And it amazes me how angry people get when the Flat Earth topic comes up. Why do we get angry over it? Why? And I got a couple of comments on that, like, what are you doing giving that crap airtime? What are you doing giving that types of questions and bringing on a guest about that? It's just something we got to talk about. We talk about the weird and strange here. Not that I'm a believer of flat earth, but it's amazing how many people are like, do you believe in that crap? Do you believe in flat earth considering you're broadcasting it? And I started scratching my head and like, So I wrote a blog about that a week ago. And then this week, we had a little bit of a controversial Wednesday night with Chris Cogswell and fill in for Chris George Zuger, Erica Lukes from her radio show, UFO Confidential. Anyways, we were talking about the ins and outs of MUFON. And there were a number of people who messaged me privately on social media and on Twitter and publicly that were basically saying, dude, what are you doing? So upset about MUFON and upset about the To the Stars Academy. And I started thinking about this because this is actually kind of important. Why is there no trust in any type of paranormal or alternative media? And it culminated with this, and you can read it on my blog. Go to spacedoutradio.com, click on the news tab. You can find it. It's called I've Been Questioned and I Have Questions. So it came down to it where I had a listener on Twitter come up to me and say, aren't you the anti-To the Stars Academy guy? Because we were in a conversation on Twitter about it. And I said, actually, no, I'm not anti-To the Stars. Not anti-MUFON. So I started thinking about this. This would be a good blog. So I wrote about it. Because here's the thing. I realize that a lot of people out there, especially in paranormal / alternative radio, there's a lot of bloggers, there's a lot of vloggers, there's a lot of people out there trying to do a lot of cool things and bringing a lot of information to the forefront. But what we don't have is a lot of journalism. What we don't have is a lot of people out there asking questions. And the minute you start asking some pointed questions, everybody jumps on the bandwagon that you are trying to manipulate a situation or you are trying to grow your own popularity or you're trying to throw somebody under the bus. And that simply is not true. All right? It's not true at all. So I don't mind throwing up these controversial topics because it gets people talking, and talking is a good thing. But the problem what we have is the minute you have questions, people automatically think you're out gunning for something. You have some sort of motive. Now, real journalism, for anybody who knows, okay, not the crap that is being played today that we see on major media outlets, whether it's Fox, whether it's CNN, whether it's a CBC up here in Canada or global, that seem to have some sort of agenda. The real nuts and bolts media that are still out there but don't have that much of a voice anymore just want to call it down the middle. They want to be that umpire in a baseball game. They want to be that referee in football or hockey or basketball that makes things happen, okay? Calling it as fair and as black and white as possible. That's what I want to do. So I wrote a blog about that because I do have questions. I have questions about MUFON. I have questions about the To the Stars Academy. And we want to bring those people on. We just don't want to tell one side of the story so it sounds like we are bashing a certain group. As many of you know, if you listened in last week, I would love to bring MUFON Executive Director Jan Harzan on the show. I want to find out from him what is going on. I want to bring on somebody from the To the Stars Academy. I've put out that request numerous times over the last years to no avail. Unless you were involved with other radio shows or mainstream, they do not want to talk to you, and they don't want you as an audience to hear about it. So, for instance, with MUFON, one of the questions that I want to ask is about their SAT team. This is a private investigative team that, believe it or not, is allowed to withhold information from the public. Why? That's a major, major question. Why? You're a public society. You're a nonprofit. You're a 501c3 in the United States. Why do you want to hold public when you sit there on your website and state that you want to be the public's eyes and ears to everything that is going on within the UFO realm? So let's say, remember that movie Signs? I brought this up a couple of times. Remember that movie Signs where you got the aliens running around the cornfield? Well, let's say that situation is true. Let's say it's real, that it's happened, and some farmer in the middle of Iowa calls up MUFON and says, I got some aliens in my cornfield. All right? MUFON sends their SAT team over there, and they encounter, this is all hypothetical, they encounter those aliens. SAT team doesn't need to report it. Not to the public. Why not? We have thousands of experiencers out there, people who are getting abducted, who are getting taken, who are getting, having these encounters that they just want answers to. They want answers. They want to know what is going on. And MUFON is withholding that information. Why? Because they're hoping that they can use that case for either a television project or some sort of documentary, and they want fresh cases. That's not a good excuse. People like Jan Harzan need to answer that. Right? If I find out, even though it says in the small print on MUFON that your story may be used for future projects, if I find out that one of my stories, let's say my Carl story, Carl at the window, the alien at the window, made it onto a MUFON television show, I want to be paid for that. It's my story. But they've covered their bases. But more importantly, it's not me who needs the questions answered. I'm just the conduit to you, the audience. That's what I am. I'm the conduit. If we don't get these questions answered, how the heck are we supposed to find any answers? And that's the reality of it. With the To the Stars Academy, I want to interview them. I'm excited about what they've done. The David Fravor videos, I'm not like a lot of people. I have no problem saying I'm not like Chris Cogswell or George Zuger, who think those videos are crap. I think they're great. I have questions about them. But my opinion on the show doesn't matter because it isn't about me. It isn't about me. My opinion doesn't matter on this show. I'm the navigator of this cockpit, not the pilot. I just need to get us to where we need to go. But the point that I'm getting at here is the fact that the To the Stars Academy will not grant media requests outside of one slightly paranormal radio show, outside of anybody who's mainstream. Why is that? Why do they not want to answer the questions that we have? I mean, Luis Elizondo seems like a pretty good guy. Everybody who I have talked to who has met Luis says he's a great guy. And do you not think that the To the Stars Academy would have an easier route if they had the support of the UFO community instead of trying to be all elitist? I'm not saying go on every talk show. Hell, I don't even care if they miss ours, but go on a few others. Don't care. Just come out and talk. People have questions. People who've been abducted have questions. People who have had encounters have questions. Seen UFOs hovering over their houses, they have questions that deserve to be answered. And that's what it's all about. That's why we do this. So I may have my own personal opinion on whether or not I like MUFON or whether or not I like the To the Stars Academy, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whatsoever. And trust me, I know when our audience is rolling their eyes saying, oh, crap, there goes Dave again on another one of his MUFON or To the Stars Academy rants again. That's not what it's about. Because part of the problem that we have in this alternative/paranormal media is we don't have journalists following things up. And if we let the topics go, we get what we ask for. So, for instance, I'm not about to jump off this MUFON train because I want that answer. Not for me, but for you guys. I'm not about to jump off the To the Stars Academy thing because I want the answer. Once again, not for me, but for all of you out there, because it affects what we are doing. Disclosure is important. UFOs are important. Whether you believe it or not, they are. Next to Jesus Christ himself coming down from the heavens above, UFOs and alien life are the second most important story in mankind's history. Sorry, I'm in Canada. People kind. We have that type of prime minister. But his government's starting to fall. Nonetheless, we cannot drop these topics. And that's exactly what groups like To the Stars and MUFON hope to happen, because it has always happened that way. It has always happened. We don't have to say anything because eventually this storm will ride over and nobody's going to ask any more questions. Because there is no media holding those groups or those type of people or Bigfoot hunters or ghost hunters accountable. That's why this whole charade of paranormal media is a facade. It really is. Outside of George Norrie, George Knapp, Linda Moulton Howe, myself, and a couple of others, that's all the journalists there are in this entire field. True trained journalists. Gone to school for it. Very, very few. Yes, you can throw Mike Ricksecker in there, Joshua Cutchin in there. You could throw Jason Offutt in there. But very, very few. Amy Hale, there's another one. All right. Very few, though, are actual journalists going on. And in the end, it is you, the public, that loses out on that. And that's what my blog is about. It's about all of you losing on out. So take a read at it at spacedoutradio.com. Thought of the Dave happens every night at this time, where we ask a question on our Twitter pages and Facebook and then read your responses on the air, because we love the audience participation around here. So today's Thought of the Dave is as follows. What are your thoughts on government agencies having a murderous hit list? Ooh, intriguing. Start off with John. Which government are we talking about? I think that was said to be a little bit sarcastic there. Let's get to Cody. Government should never get that big. Kevin. They are more likely just to discredit you by saying you are crazy, a la Project Grudge, or just blackmail you. Oh, it's just that simple, isn't it? Isn't that cute? Oh, we don't need a little bit of murder here. Let's just go with a little blackmail on this side. You got to wonder, do they have like a big Jeopardy type board? Where they're like, oh, what is blackmail? Go from there. Billy. I believe they are involved by association with big oil, pharmaceutical companies, and of course, let's not forget the contracts for arms manufacturing and guns. Dave. Maybe not the official government, but certainly others when they held office, may have done things. Gregory, power tends to corrupt. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. An observation that a person's sense of morality lessens as his or her power increases. That statement was made by Lord Acton, a British historian of the 19th century. And there it goes. Mary thinks it's very possible. Teresa believes in MK Ultra. Natasha, let me tell you what I know about it. Then she throws on a couple of emojis, which you can't really pronounce emojis on the air, or exactly what they are. Coop, or Coop's Beard, you never know which one it is, says, I think we need to start our own. Rebel, you rebel. Renee, all I have to say about this question is give you a quote. I never would have agreed to this formulation of Central Intelligence Agency back in 1947 if I had known it would become the American Gestapo. Harry S. Truman. It's probably a good place to stop the thought of the day. There will be a new one tomorrow, as we're going to have a great show tomorrow night. Susan Shepard is going to join us as we are going to get into Men in Black. We are going to get into shadow people. It's going to be a lot of fun. Maybe, just like salt and pepper, we'll throw in a dash of UFOs and a dash of aliens and a dash of ghosts. Let's just see where this goes tomorrow night, 9:06 Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern at spacedoutradio.com and all of our affiliates that go along with that. I want to say a big thank you to John Potash tonight for coming on the show, talking about the CIA's murderous ways. Always an interesting show when John comes on. Do you buy it? Do you think it's actually going on, or do you think that we just don't know? Maybe sometimes those secrets that we don't know are a little bit more important. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thank you to everyone listening in at home, at work, in your cars, wherever you may be, especially those in our chat rooms tonight. You know where you are, on Spreaker, on Facebook, Rev Radio, and of course Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Please remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for telling your friends about us, doing your part to make us bigger and better every single night. Because together, my friends, we own the night. I will talk to you in 21 hours from now. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need to take us home. Good night.